The most impactful person of my life was my grandfather. He was an amazing man. He was a great father to my mother and her 2 siblings, a committed husband, a veteran, and the epitome of a hard worker. 2 things he really loved were his Lincoln cars and his hats from Henry the Hatter in downtown Detroit. But what he loved more than anything was his granddaughters. Every summer when we were little, we would pack up the car in Detroit and drive down to Ohio to stay with him and my grandmother. It was our second home filled with love and adventure. My grandmother was a chef, and she would prepare the best meals every day. One day, my grandmother was out, and my grandfather was in charge of making us dinner. So he placed little white saucers right in front of us. What was on the menu? Green beans. Not a side dish of green beans, just green beans. The only thing I can think in my 7-year-old mind was yuck. It was a hard no for me. But my grandfather had a way of convincing us the way only he could. See, for as long as I could remember, my grandfather would tell us how beautiful we were. So he said, if we wanted to stay beautiful and grow strong, we had to eat our green beans. And if we did, we'd grow up to be beautiful, just like Janet Jackson. So of course we scarfed them down, but just to sweeten the deal, my grandfather went to the freezer and gave us all a side of orange sherbet ice cream. To this day, it is one of the most memorable meals of my life, not only because of what we ate, but because of what he told to us. When I got up from that table at 7 years old, I was sure of 2 things. Green beans and orange sherbet ice cream is a terrible combination, and that I was beautiful. Unfortunately, I would grow up to find the world outside my grandparents' home was very different. It made me question things I had come to know about myself. Near the top of that list was whether my dark skin was really beautiful. Time and time again, the world told me that I wasn't, even though my grandfather told me every time. I remember being called names by classmates and even friends. I remember the incredibly backhanded compliment, "You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl," as if dark and pretty couldn't exist together. Time and time again, the world told me that I wasn't beautiful. So those experiences ignited a passion in me to start a fashion brand to change the way that people view darker skin tones and to empower the way we feel about ourselves. I started a fashion brand because I believe that fashion could be used to send a powerful message. And that message that I want to send to society is that all shades of skin are beautiful and all shades of skin should be celebrated, especially those that fashion, beauty, media, and society deem unworthy every single day. So why is this happening? There are many reasons, but the one we need to talk about today is colorism. Colorism is discrimination against people with a darker skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic group. Now, before I dive into colorism, I want to state that it is a byproduct of racism. People who practice colorism believe that the closer your skin tone is to whiteness, the better you are, the smarter you are, the more aesthetically pleasing you are. And I know you're probably sitting there thinking, like, not me, or do people and companies really do this? First, I'd say implicit bias is real. We have attitudes toward people or associate stereotypes with them without our conscious knowledge. Second, the next time you're scrolling down your timeline of some of your favorite products or some of the biggest fashion brands, count how many dark-skinned people you see. Colorism is prevalent in fashion, media, and representation, but it also has concrete punishing consequences. See, just like racism, colorism is a system. Colorism affects self-concept, prescient information, attraction, and affiliation. But it also impacts upward mobility. People with darker skin tones receive fewer job opportunities, and when they do get the job, they're paid less, fewer housing opportunities, and people of darker skin tones are incarcerated at higher rates. In a study published in 2018 by LSP Monk, after taking into account gender and level of education, Monk found that African Americans had a 36% chance of being arrested in their lifetimes. And darker-skinned African Americans had a 66% chance. The world has criminalized melanin, and so has fashion. Now, as a chemist, I believe it is important I explain where the color of skin comes from. It comes from a compound called melanin. Now, melanin is produced by cells called melanocytes. Now, we all have melanocytes that produce melanin, but people of darker skin tones produce more melanin. Specifically, they produce a lot more eumelanin. One of the huge ironies of fashion is that while black people are often discriminated against and left out, black culture is used as a source of inspiration for so much of our fashion. Intentional brands that are determined to make change can push us to be better and to do better. They have the power to bridge the gap of fashion's love of black culture and fashion's discrimination and lack of respect for black people. In the book, How Brands Become Icons by Douglas B. Holt, he writes, "Iconic brands function like culture activists, encouraging people to think differently about themselves. The most powerful iconic brands are prescient, addressing the leading edges of culture change. See, these brands don't simply evoke benefits, personalities, or emotions. Rather, their myths prod people to reconsider accepted ideas about themselves." When I first heard that quote, I was immediately consumed. The mission I had set out to accomplish for eumelanin was validated. I believe that we have to be intentional in our designs, what we include in them, but also what we leave out. Because by telling people what is acceptable and who is acceptable, we are also telling them who is not. Before I go, I want to leave you with a couple of lines from my favorite poem by Danielle Milton that I had found years ago. It helped me love myself when it seemed the world did not. In this poem, I can still hear my grandfather's voice. "Because your blackness was knit together by God himself, your kinky roots were wound together by the creator of the universe, and your full dark chocolate lips and eyes were sculpted and crafted by the master craftsman. God could not dream a sweeter dream than you. So don't let them tell you otherwise." Thank you.